All right. So good afternoon. This is Steve Nelson at Education Northwest. Welcome to the first webinar of the BIE Research Alliance. We'll be taking roll by having each participating school respond to a polling question, so watch for it to appear on the right of your screen. Since your sound would be muted during the webinar, please post comments or questions online. We encourage each school to appoint a person to keep notes and post comments on chat. To begin the session, I want to briefly review who we are, the regional labs as a whole, and more about research alliances. Education Northwest has been your regional educational laboratory for over 40 years. Many of you may remember us as the Northwest Regional Educational Laboratory. We're here to help bridge the gap between research and practice. We're one of 10 federally funded organizations serving educators across the nation. The new Regional Educational Laboratory contract focuses on supporting various research alliances in each region across the nation. Because we cannot pay travel and meeting expenses of alliance members, we propose to work with existing allied groups of educators who have a history of meeting and working together to address common needs. We add the value of helping alliance members access and use quality evidence. The BIE area schools were a natural choice for forming one of these alliances. You have a long history of meeting and working together. Education Northwest has an established reputation in serving Native communities, and we share a common interest in improving the college and career outcomes of our learners. We want to help you take a closer look at the research of others to become more thoughtful consumers of evidence. We also want to encourage a closer look at your own school's data and what it can tell us about improving graduation rates. So we support a two-pronged approach, helping schools learn from the formal research of others and making more productive use of their own data. Today we'll see a combination of video clips and live commentary. These clips were excerpted from an earlier dropout prevention forum held in Portland with Dr. Russell Rumberger, one of the authors of the practice guide we're using today. Dr. Tim Bruce, superintendent of La Conner School District, is with us live to share his perspectives on what they've learned in 22 years of working together in a Swinomish community. We also have a little time to discuss the implications of findings for your own schools. We'd appreciate it if you kept notes that each school would be willing to share with us after the session. As you do so, think about ways in which you'd like to engage your full staff in learning and applying this research. Your note taker can post key comments or questions on chat for our moderator to consider. This webinar will be recorded so that it will be available to use with your schools if you would like to. Each of your schools should have a bound copy of the practice guide that we sent you to keep in your professional library for staff reference. A URL was also given so that the reports, so copies could be made for your own staff. You'll be hearing a lot about the What Works Clearinghouse, which is a contract with the Institute of Education Sciences to vet educational research on a variety of topics as an independent and objective source of information about the effectiveness of various educational practices. We'll be referring to them a lot as we work with the BIE Alliance over the next 5 years. Remember, I'm about to play the video clip, so remember to have your sound turned up on your computer to hear the video. So now let's start by hearing the first clip from Dr. Rumberger.
So this is Tim Bruce, and before we talk about Dr. Rumberger's 6 recommendations, I'd just like to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the product of a small school system. I was raised on the Coeur d'Alene tribe, tribal properties, and so for all of my friends at the Coeur d'Alene Tribal School, I'd like to say hello. I've been the superintendent of schools at LeConner for 22 years. I think that was told to you before. We're a small school district in northwestern Washington, and about a third of our student population is Swinomish. Today, what I hope to do is to help us focus on the realities of how the challenges of dropout prevention, or what I'd rather call it as school success, might happen in smaller schools. In our school in LeConner in 2004, we began a research project based on the supports that our students told us that were important for them to have school success. So many times today, you're going to hear me talk about the importance of bringing your students' voice forward as a part of your data collection. After all, they are our real clients, and that's who we're there for. So my school is not perfect, and like you, we are still striving to help all of our students to be successful. So here's a summary of the points that Dr. Rumberger made. And here are some of the points that I'd like to talk about. So Dr. Rumberger talked to us about the 6 points of data collection, and you get the sense that those points are really quite formal and probably come to us from a myriad of data points. But in small schools, I think we automatically know, and instantly it becomes very personal. When we have dropouts, oftentimes it may be 2 or 3 students. And we automatically, when we look at the numbers, everyone around the table starts to say, who is that person? And what is their problem? And what happened to them? Why are we losing them? And that's just the realities of what we all need to deal with. But the best data that we can gather and is being used to make positive changes can only be as good as the actions that we put out there. If it's not improving our student success, then it's not useful to us at all. So I would just like to encourage you all, however you collect data, however you look at it, whatever names or whatever groups of teachers or people who are responsible for that you really ask yourself, is it driving towards real school success for our students? When Dr. Rumberger talks about who we should target with our students, the LeConner students that we've worked with over the years keep bringing up what they call the tough years. And so in my last point here, when I talk about those transition years, our students talk about those as being grade 8, 9, and 10. And they talk about struggling between 8th and 9th grade because they move between buildings. They move from a middle school to a high school. So we've had to put in some real support systems for them at that point. But they also talk about 9th and 10th grade, and that's where we tend to lose our students. So that's where we're focusing a lot of our work today, trying to hang on to them. Our students tell us in 9th grade they almost felt like they were in a fog, and they talk about credits. And later on, when they're juniors and seniors, they say as a freshman and sophomore, they didn't even know what credits were, let alone when they failed them and somebody said you're going to have to make up that credit. So I'd just like you to think about those points as you're putting down the answer to this question. To what degree does your school collect and use the type of student data described by this recommendation? So for each of your groups, why don't you take about 5 minutes and have a discussion. I'd encourage you to post any thoughts or questions you may have, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. So to those of you who posted information about recommendation 1, thank you. So now let's move on to what Dr. Rumberger says about recommendation 2. So here's a summary of the points that Dr. Rumberger just made. And then let's move on to some thoughts that come from our experience at the LaConner School District. So first, I just want to point out that it's important to remember that a mentor can be anyone in a school system. But in LaConner, the Swinomish tribe has graciously funded a mentor for each one of our grade levels. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the match that our students choose. So the first point is it's important to have a good match. And what we recommend is that the student gets to help pick who their mentor is going to be. The next point is retain mentors at crucial transitions. And in that, I talked previously about 8th and 9th and 10th grade. Oftentimes between 8th and 9th grade, we rotate our mentors. So they move from building to building. They move up with a group, and the other one rotates back down. Some of us call that looping. We've found that that really helps to have that friendly face, that mentor that transitions during those tough times with our students. And the students have reported to us that that's very important to them. And the last point that I want to make is about burnout. I think between a mentor and the student, there probably is a time when it's time to move on. And we allow students to be with their mentors for as long as they want, usually, even though they're ones assigned to specific grade levels. But oftentimes a mentor ends up going to the family with maybe some not so good news, and oftentimes with some wonderful news. But when they take some news that maybe there's been excessive absenteeism or something like that, eventually some of that relationship starts to fray. And so we've allowed students to move on to a different mentor, and we've found that to be very positive. So I would just like to plant that seed with all of you that a mentor doesn't mean it has to be for life. That tends to change throughout the student's career. And so with that, our next question is, who are the personal connectors at your school? And we'll take about 5 minutes again for you to brainstorm and record those.
Hello? Mr. Thompson, I was wondering if I could get a signature. That's it. That's the only one. Thank you. You bet.
So we're back, and thanks to Lummi for posting. Good to see that you have your advisory period and also that you're doing snowboarding and mountain biking. I'd just like to encourage you to think about skiing as an avid skier on this end. So with that, let's move on to the next recommendation, recommendation 3 from Dr. Rumberger, and see what he says. So here's a summary of the points just made by Dr. Rumberger. And next slide is some of the points that I've made coming from some of the work at LeConner. And the first point is extra time, easier said than done. And the reason that we put that down was because of extracurricular activities, family and tribal commitments, and then, of course, dealing with absenteeism with some of our students. It's just very hard to think about making the school day longer. So like Lummi, we've embedded a school advisory and an extra study time at our school. We do summer school. And in summer school, we're working more one-on-one or one to maybe two students at a time. We've found that just holding regular summer school, we dealt with some of the same things with families fishing and doing cultural things, that it was hard to get them into school. So by doing one-on-one, we actually make appointments with families, and we either go to the family or the family comes to us. And that seems to work much better, and it does give our students that individual attention that they really need if they're going to catch up for whatever reason that they need to have more school. We also run a study hall after school, and we do that at the Swinomish Tribal Center. And that works for some students. It doesn't work for others. And one of the major reasons is just the activities that go on after school. So I think in any of these cases, schools need to look at providing a variety of ways for students to stay up and to catch up when they're in school. And so our next question is going to revolve around that, and it is, what approaches are you using to provide academic support for your students? And it's really helpful, for me and for everyone else to hear what you're doing in your schools. So I'll challenge everybody out there to be as good as Lummi and to post this time so that we can see what's happening.
I apologize. This is Claymore. We had a question over a cell phone on how do you post your comments?
This is Diane at Education Northwest. There is a panel on the right-hand side of the screen that says chat, and it might be hidden to be just like a single bar. You'll see a little arrow next to it. If you click on the arrow, it'll open up this chat panel, and you'll see where the chats have been posted, and then you can type yours in the box at the bottom.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, we're back. And thank you to Lummi and to Yakima for posting. Yakima, it was nice to see that you are doing that second dose of mathematics and science. In LeConner, we're doing the same thing. We actually run a double period for some students that need that. So you get your math lesson, and then you also get tutoring to help do your homework in the next session. So sounds like we're both moving in the same direction on that one. So now let's move on and listen to what Dr. Rumberger says about recommendation number 4.
Recommendation 4 is people approach.
All right, so in this next slide, you're going to see the points that Dr. Rumberger just made. And then in the following slide, you'll see some of the thoughts that came out of some of our work in LeConner. So first and foremost, it came down to, and this is based on research and what we truly believe is very important at this point, and that's staff training has to be a priority. And I think all of us out there can agree. If you're going to build those strong relationships, have relevance in your work, and have rigor, and I want to make sure with rigor that I think we all understand that that doesn't mean more work, that means important work, that you have to have a well-trained staff that understands those 3 points. And for us, we talked about having the advocates at each level, or our mentors at each level that's provided by the Swinomish tribe. It's been important for us to include them in all the trainings that we do for our faculty. Now, I need to explain to you, it was brought up to me, who are those mentors? Well, typically those are people, many of them have been graduates from our high school, and they've come back to work as paid members by the tribe to be in the classroom. What we faced a long time ago is that our school faculty did not mirror what our population. So a third of our population being Swinomish, we certainly didn't have a third of our faculty being Swinomish. So this was in an effort, and it also came out of the same research when our students were telling us that there weren't enough people that looked like them in our school system. So that's how we approached that. And looking at how to improve the behaviors and social skills, it's very important to have tribal members there and working with students. So going along then, student recognition, of course I think we all do this, but in the tribal newsletters there's been a great effort to post names and pictures of students, especially for good attendance, for anything that's maybe going on in school where they've done something that they should be honored for. We've also, for many years now, done tribal gatherings, and those are where typically we'll have a fish dinner, a traditional fish dinner, and the whole school is invited. That means not only all the teachers, but all the students and the families, and that means whether you're a tribal member or not, everyone is welcome in the entire Lackawanna community. And that's where awards are given, and that's become a really wonderful thing that goes on. From our students, and this comes from the research that I spoke about early on, our students told us that it's very important to have that peer-to-peer support. And so they need time together. In the research, one of our students said, when they got together, it was like 10 brains becoming one big brain, and they could certainly then come up with the answer. Now, I think any of you, you'll know what I'm talking about when in Indian country you say you maybe have, out of that 10, 8 of them are all cousins, and when they get together, sometimes they know exactly how to pick at one another as they're coming to that answer. But even with the challenges that can come out of that, I think it's still very important that they've told us they need to be together, and they do much better in school when they're working as one group. So we go on to the question, what approaches can we use in schools and communities to improve student classroom behavior? So we had 2 people post the last time, and I think that's wonderful. We can all learn from one another, and it's wonderful to see what practices we're all using out there. So I'd encourage you all to post on this one as well. So we'll take about 5 minutes for that. Well, thanks again to everyone for some wonderful posting of what's going on in your schools. Hopefully at the end of this program, we'll have a few minutes when we can open up the mic and everyone can have a chance to talk with one another and ask some questions about these. I know I've already got some questions that I would like to find out about the good work that you're doing out there. So now let's move on to what Dr. Rumberger says about recommendation number 5. So here is a summary of what Dr. Rumberger just talked about in recommendation number 5. And the following slide is some of the thoughts that come out of LeConner. So first of all, Dr. Rumberger was talking about a school of maybe 3,000 students and creating small class sizes. But we all know we're already small. But the question that I would have for you is, what is small enough when we're trying to build a trusting relationship? And I think what we've found at LeConner is small enough means one-on-one if you can possibly do it. It may mean one advocate with maybe 2 students. And of course, again, the student choice starts to come into that as well, who they want there, what they seem to need. So when I talk to you a little bit about our summer school and how we're going to appointments where they can come in and work one-on-one or maybe 1 to 2 students, that seems to help us when we're building those relationships between the adult and a trusting relationship with that adult and that student. The next point is the benefits and, of course, the challenges of team teaching, which team teaching was recommended. And I think we all know about the benefits. You know, you're lowering that student to adult or teacher class ratio. When you've got more adults, you've got more chance for students to get individualized instruction when you've got more adults in the room. But I think what we've learned along the way, and this is with our Swinomish advocates and with other volunteers or with other class or teachers that even want to teach together, that they need to want to do that. At times, they have to have a good relationship and a good working relationship. And I think if you allow them some choice in where they're going to work and who they're going to work with, you're going to get some much stronger teaching and advocacy for your students coming out of that. The next point, and this comes from our students and some of the research we've done, we all know that the benefits of being involved with an extracurricular activities, you know, after-school activities, even in-school activities that happen at lunchtime or special groups that are together. But what our students told us is if someone would have just asked them to join. Now, you know, that'd be best if it was a peer, but even if it's the coach or that special teacher says, you know, you would be good at that, why don't you give it a try? They seem to be just starved for somebody to reach out and ask them to join. So that came straight out of the research, straight from our students. And then again from our students is they're telling us that they needed time to work together, but they basically were telling us, you know, you don't have to be so serious all the time driving towards high test scores. We got to have time to have fun together. So I think, you know, we've got to remember that in this time when we're all pushing to meet AYP and all those good things. There's a time to work and there's a time to have fun. And so with that, I'll ask you to go to our next question, which, how does your school personalize the learning experience for all your students? And you've got about 5 minutes, and the challenge is on to see how many of you can post something to share with your neighbors. Okay, well, how quickly that time went by. I just wanted to make a comment. I certainly enjoyed seeing the comment about students should be encouraged and counseled on how to have a dream. With the Swinomish tribe, the late Landy James, who many of you may have known, in our gym it says, strive for excellence, achieve your dream. So, and with that, let's move on to the next recommendation, number 6, and hear what Dr. Rumberger has to say. Okay, so here's a summary of the recommendations that we just heard. And then we'll move on to some of the thoughts that we put together in LeConner for you to think about. The first one, and I think you heard this before, is to invest in our teachers. And we do know that research tells us that the best place to put our money is into making our teachers the very best that they can be. There's nothing to substitute for quality instruction in the classroom when you're looking at trying to improve student success. So I think we can all agree we have to keep that on the front burner. But next of all, we put down to build relevant connections and ongoing support for students with, and I'm going to skip to the second one, skill centers first. And I think many of you know that in our county, where our school is located, we were lucky enough to get a grant for a new skills center, which is the Northwest Career and Technical Academy. And that academy is offering a variety of high-tech job opportunities, skill training type things for students where they can get not only high school credit, but college credit as well. And that has been a real savior for many of our juniors and seniors, especially for our tribal members. They've gone and not only experienced maybe one type of job opportunity that might be out there with the training, but many of them have done 2 or 3 at this point and are really searching out and telling us that, you know, this has been a real turning point for them. So with knowing that, we've had discussion, and this is where I'd encourage you all, and I think you all probably still communicate with your tribal leadership on a daily or basis, and I encourage you to keep doing that. With the Swinomish tribe, we're talking now about some of their enterprises, and they just got done building a new hotel, which so far has been very successful with the casino. And so we're talking about starting like a Skill Center program, but not running it through the Skill Center. We're going to run it with the tribe on hospitality. And then we're also talking about a program in fisheries. And we're going to go out from there. So our intent is to hopefully get those dual credited so we can offer college credit as well as high school credit for that. And our students will be spending maybe about half of their day out in an internship once they're primed and ready to go. And I think that's hopefully going to give a lot of our students a reason to stay in school. So, and then the last point is colleges and universities. And we're lucky enough to have Skagit Valley College and also have Northwest Indian College, which our students, you know, can use during their high school time and actually once they graduate and move on. But I would like to bring up, you know, that students still need supports. Even after they graduate and they're trying to find their way into college. And many of our Native students talk about how hard it is and how homesick they have become when they didn't even go that far when we think about it. From our small village, or the Swinomish village, to go to Western Washington University is maybe about 30 miles away. But to go up there and have to stay, you know, and move away from the culture has been a real challenge and something that they come back and say that they really needed help with. But I'll just tell you, I think there's some good work going on out there at Gonzaga University. I happen to be working with a person right now who's doing some research on the supports that are needed as we send our tribal youth off to universities. Her name is Susan Lee, and you know, I think we can find out from her research by December what she's recommending. But it's basically, I think, if I can jump ahead in her own research, to place our Native youth with a mentor and introduce them to that mentor before they ever leave home, and that mentor will be there with them when they get to the college or university, and to help kind of bridge that gap as they're trying to move forward and into their career and work life. And so with that, you know, we'll be moving on to the last question. But before we go there, I just wanted to tell you, after you've spent your next 5 minutes pondering the question and hopefully all of you posting your comments, we're going to take a little time, so stay with us to open up. And if you've got questions for one another, or maybe questions for me or somebody here on the staff at the lab, we'll be happy to try and answer those. So here's your question. In what ways do you make school rigorous and relevant for all students? So take about 5 minutes and then we'll all come back together.